The Way We Were, where we unearth a thread of continuity in cinema, music, art, culture, society, and politics to discover the connection to each other.
Welcome to The Way We Were. This is Rima, and this year history was made at Cannes. Yes, filmmaker Payal Kapadia became the first person from India to clinch the prestigious Grand Prix at the 77th Cannes Film Festival. This triumph reminded me of Neecha Nagar by Chetan Anand, a film that was made in 1945, if I remember correctly. It was written by Khwaja Ahmad Abbas and Hayatullah Ansari, and the film pioneered social realism in Indian cinema and shared the top honors at the first Cannes Film Festival in 1946. This film cleverly adapted Russian writer Maxim Gorky's 1902 play, The Lower Depths, and raised questions about the disparity between the rich and the poor, along with how social and political narratives are twisted for the benefit of the powerful. I remember being blown away by its brilliance when Doordarshan telecast it in the 80s. Kapadia's film All We Imagine Is Light, from what I hear, expands on the themes of social realism, and I look forward to seeing it. And I feel so proud that the first Indian film in 3 decades to compete in Cannes' main competition and to win was directed by a young woman who thinks of cinema as art and as an opportunity to do some much needed social commentary. And she was very clear-sighted even while delivering the acceptance speech when she said, "Please don't wait another 30 years to have an Indian film." And now for another big India moment that I want to talk about. At Cannes this year, another film was screened, which is from India, and that was a gloriously restored 1976 Shyam Benegal classic, Manthan. The film was treated to a red carpet world premiere alongside films from Godard, Akira Kurosawa, and Wim Wenders. I watched this film way back in the 80s on Doordarshan again, because that was the time when the national broadcaster would curate quality cinema ranging from Adur, Arvindan, Benegal, Nehlani, Ray, and even Francis Ford Coppola. I recently revisited Manthan on YouTube and was dazzled once again by its staggering acting talent and the fact that someone decided to make a thoroughly engrossing film about the genesis of a dairy cooperative movement at a time when Amitabh Bachchan was being hailed as a one-man industry. And let's not forget, it was India's first crowd-funded film. When the opening credits finish and 500,000 farmers of Gujarat present Manthan, when you read these lines, the goosebumps begin there and continue as you read names of Benegal, Govind Nehlani, Vijay Tendulkar, Kafi Azmi, Vanraj Bhatia, Shama Zaidi, Nasiruddin Shah, Smita Patil, Mohan Agashe, Salim Ghosh, Anant Nag, Amrish Puri, Kulbhushan Kharbanda, and the heart-stoppingly beautiful Girish Karnad. His eyes blazing with idealism and the passion to change the dialogue around neutrality in times of social churning. So when a colleague tells him, हमें दोनों पक्षों के साथ एक सा व्यवहार करना चाहिए, and he says, एक के पास पैसा और सत्ता और दूसरे के पास कुछ भी नहीं, दोनों से एक सा व्यवहार. This is a powerful question to ask a political and neutral onlookers in any era. There has never been an idealistic protagonist in Hindi cinema who arrives with less fanfare than Karnad, but makes as much impact. Karnad's Dr. Rao comes to a dusty village in Gujarat's Kheda district to start a milk cooperative, and in the very first scene at a railway station, he refuses to sit in a tonga being pulled by an emaciated horse and chooses to walk instead. He instinctively gauges the crushing unfairness of caste and social inequalities and refuses to be compromised by the overtures of the wily Sarpanch played by Kulbhushan Kharbanda and the exploitative dairy owner Mishra played by Amrish Puri, who mocks him the way dissenters are mocked often. Mishra says, "Naujawan hamesha adarshwadi hote hain." दुनिया को बदलने की भावना रखते हैं। आदर्श की भावना देखकर बहुत अच्छा लगता है क्योंकि ये जल्दी ही गायब होने वाली चीज है। इस देश में आदर्शवादियों की बड़ी जरूरत है। Even among the Dalits, who Rao is trying to empower with the cooperative, he has an adversary, Bhola. Bhola is played by a fiery Nasiruddin Shah, and he is possibly the only rebel in a village and truly understands to what extent his community has been subjugated. And he has his reasons to mistrust Rao and his men too. The scene where he finally begins to trust Rao is a thing of beauty. Rao bails Bhola out of jail and wordlessly drives him towards the village. The jeep breaks down and Bhola refuses to budge or to help. Rao then gets down, struggles to repair the jeep, and finally the vehicle sputters into life. When the two reach the village, Bhola disembarks in a huff and walks away, and Rao drives on. However, a bond has been forged. It is Bhola ultimately who becomes the biggest champion of the cooperative, and just as the unity of the residents is beginning to pose a direct threat to the monopoly of Mishra's dairy, in a scene that will remind you of many current headlines, the Dalit homes are set on fire and the victims themselves are arrested for the crime. When the flames have been doused, Mishra arrives with blankets and ration to play the savior. Rao's own life gets complicated as he finds himself getting drawn to Bindu, another village rebel played by the glorious Smita Patil. Tame chor ho, she yells the first time he samples the milk of her buffalo, but soon warms up to him. The two often chat about village politics, its protagonists, and once during a stroll through the fields, teeter precariously on the edge of a mutual attraction. She then asks him if he's married. And when he concedes that he is, she tells him with eyes flaming with scorn to leave, even though she is perhaps already desperately in love with him. Rao's wife, played by Abha Dhulia, unlike him, is not an idealist or a humanist, and says "chi" for all the wrong reasons when one of Rao's colleagues has an affair with a Dalit girl. She plays wistful film songs on radio to feel less lonely, and Roothe Roothe Piya and Tum Jo Hue Mere Humsafar strike an ironical chord as she passively watches Rao's preoccupation with his work. The cooperative election is another eye-opener for Rao, who learns that perhaps caste privilege and power cannot be defeated. But then perhaps they can be, if people decide to be their own saviors. So as Rao prepares to leave the village, it is Bhola who reminds the villagers of their own power and memorably screams, "Ye sisauti apni hai." The film then ends on a note of tentative hope. When I first watched Manthan on Doordarshan decades ago, I was blown away by its compelling storytelling, and yes, its star power. A few days ago, however, just before its screening at Cannes, when I watched it again on YouTube, I was stunned by how simply and powerfully it made its point about the inevitability of a social revolution. It reminded me of men like Verghese Kurian, who, with their intentionality, created a white revolution in India. It made me think of makers like Benegal and writers like Tendulkar, who told stories we no longer have any space for. It reminded me of Karnad, who fought against totalitarian ideas till his last breath. Of the fact that 500,000 farmers invested rupees 2 each in Manthan to bring their story to us. Remember farmers? It reminded me of the kind of citizenry we have devolved into, a WhatsApp addicted, apathetic, cynical, embittered people whose worldview has no doors, only walls. We are now being taught by cinema that disconnection is power and we must exercise it to become even more powerful. We must exclude even if the one we are excluding is just another version of us. Watch Manthan once again to remember the people we were once and the India that was. An India unafraid to introspect, course correct, and eager to belong to all its citizens and not just a few.
The Way We Were, where we revisit the past to understand how the ebb and flow of popular culture shapes the way we are. Only on The Podcaster.